Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Brennan Wiersma. Today I'm here with David Pere from Military to Millionaire. Excited to ask you some real estate questions, investing, personal finance. You are pretty well versed in all things related to that. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brennan.
Yeah, so I guess let's just start off with what is Military to Millionaire? How did you come up with that brand name? And I guess when did that start? Have you always been have you always been interested in finance?
I suppose I've always been interested in finance, but I didn't actually do anything useful until probably 2015. I bought a duplex. I lived in one half, rented the other, and that was kind of the light bulb. Um, Reading the good old Rich Dad Poor Dad book that a lot of people accredit to their future success or understanding of finance. I can't actually take credit for the brand. I have a friend of mine told me I should start a blog, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll document what I'm doing with real estate. Uh, I came up with a bunch of different names and like threw them out to my Facebook friends, and nobody liked any of them. Um, a friend of mine who's actually not in the military was like, "Oh, why don't you do like Military Millionaire?" And then that domain name was taken. So we were like, "How about From Military to Millionaire?" Talking about the journey, and then yeah, I kind of sent that out to the same people and they all loved it. So I was like, all right, well, we'll do this. And then I guess a lot of people loved it because it has grown pretty quickly over the last 2 or 3 years from just like my hobby as a blogger to I'm going to exit the military this year and take it full time. I don't think I'll ever need a W-2 again. So it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, and the title certainly draws attention. I know when I saw that, I wanted to know more. So how long have you been in the military? And thank you for your service, by the way.
I appreciate it. 12 and a half years.
Okay. And so you're a Marine, correct?
I am.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. So 12 years, did you kind of just decide that that was what you wanted to do as far as college, or did you have a career in mind? What's that process look like?
Yeah, I had no idea what I wanted to do as far as school goes. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I didn't really have money for school.
Hmm.
And I grew up in Arkansas, so I was like, oh, I want to see the world. And well, hey, look, the military is a great option if you don't want to go to school and you don't know what you want to do with your life, but you want to see the world.
Yeah.
Um, and then I chose the Marine Corps because I talked to all the recruiters and they were most appealing to me. I think every branch of service has their own personality. Personally, I like the kind of asshole, like we're better than you, not really, but I mean the Marine Corps is just like they're the known as the most challenging branch. So like if you
Mm.
want to be challenged and pushed to your limits, like that's kind of where you end up. um, so that appealed to me and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be awesome. And some of it has been and some of it's not, it's not always been sunshine and rainbows, but yeah, I did that. I signed up. I'm a logistics guy, so I do like technically a truck driver, but the more you get promoted, you don't drive trucks anymore. You do much bigger picture logistics stuff. And I was stationed in Japan first, and then I've got to see like 13 countries my first 4 years, and went to Afghanistan for 8 months, 9 months, and did yeah. So it's been a good ride. And then yeah, now I'm at a spot where I like the Marine Corps, but I don't know. I think I'm going to finish out in the reserves.
That's awesome. And it's to me, it seems like the the whole culture of the military and kind of the some things you can draw from it can translate into business as well, as far as just being disciplined and having that work ethic and you know keep going when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Things to that effect. Do you feel you've taken some of those morals with you into your business?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that transfers over. One of the things I think that's most beneficial is the ability to make decisions, right? Like they say, being decisive is one of the most important traits for successful people, is just making a decision.
Hmm.
And the Marine Corps and the military in general is pretty good about teaching you to make a decision. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the right decision, but they say any decision is better than no decision, which you could argue that people make bad decisions, but like just the point being the ability to get off the X and make a decision rather than just staying put and wondering what's going to happen. Um, that's a big one. I think that and like structured discipline in general, right, is very valuable. And then personally, I've taken a lot from. I was a recruiter, so I took a lot from the like networking and sales side of being a recruiter, and that's obviously helped me a lot with building a brand, building a community.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So this whole topic of military to millionaire, how do you bridge that gap from the military? Because you're making money and you're also not spending a lot, right? You kind of have housing paid for and things like that. What does that look like as someone in the military from a financial perspective? I guess in the same case of what you did.
Yeah, I mean, for one, they should start sooner than I did. I think at the beginning, it looks like just maxing out as much money as you possibly can into your thrift savings plan, which is our 401k. We have we can put, I need to double check. I don't think it went up this year, but $19,500 a year into your 401k. And, if you start that, you're 18. If you put a decent chunk of money in there the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, whatever that you're in the military, theoretically you could just leave it, never touch it again, let it ride, and then you can take whatever money you were putting in there and invest in real estate or whatever your go-to method is. um, I am convinced that if you put even just 50K in there in the first, I'm going to assume you can hear that.
Yeah, I just thought that was my computer or something.
No, that's my roommate cooking. Let me go.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. I got all the time in the world. I can also edit stuff too if we need to, but I don't. Honestly, the more real it is, the better.
I feel like he got it stopped, so
Right on.
should be all right.
Onward.
Yeah, he's always burning stuff while he cooks. But I unfortunately did it yesterday for like the first time ever. I let the bacon go too long, so now I can't even give him a hard time about it. Mm,
That's rough.
oh well. Uh, I'm sorry. Where
Oh,
was the train of thought before my fire alarm went off?
you were talking about the amount you can put into your 401k, and you truly
Mm.
believe that, and I think that's where it went off.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, if you put $50,000 into your TSP in the first, like when you're like 18 to 23, right, and then you just never touched it again. I mean, I'd have to do the math on that, but you'd have over $1 million when you retire, and even if you only withdrew 4%, that's $40,000 a year for your retirement, right? So then you have this wonderful thing that if you just never touch again, allows you to take more risks than the average person because your like retirement is theoretically covered. And so I think the military is great because it allows people to take risks. So if you get involved in real estate, right, if you have nothing to fall back on, you can't take that big of a risk because you can't afford to be wiped out. But if you're like a young service member, right, let's say you're a barracks guy, you live in the barracks, your housing's covered, you go to the chow hall, your food's covered, your medical's covered, your dental's covered. Like the only expenses you have are things you buy. Like the moment you join the military, you have I mean, you can't say independence because you've got the job, but like you could literally just save 100% of your paycheck and invest it, and you wouldn't need it. You got food covered, housing covered, job, like whatever. You buy a car, maybe. You could. I would argue that you don't even need to do that at your first. I didn't have a car for the first 2.5 years I was in the military, and so I think there's like a mentality there that's like, okay, well, I could just if you just suffered for a little while and just saved every penny when you're young, then you can set yourself up for success very quickly. And and then you get promoted and you just don't, instead of taking all the pay raises and spending them on dumb stuff, you just reinvest it into whatever avenue of approach you prefer. I am a real estate guy, so I'll tell people all day, like, hey, when you finally get out of the barracks, use your VA loan, buy a fourplex, live in one unit, rent the others out, cut your living expenses, pocket all your housing allowance, which isn't even, it's tax exempt, and then just save all that money and reinvest. And it can be a very quick pipeline from, you know, I don't know what's going on with my paychecks. Why don't I ever get to use them? They're always gone, to, completely free of whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it just takes some dedicated time. I mean, I haven't even been that consistent. I spend money on all kinds of stuff that I don't need to because I just like whatever. But I 5 years I've done enough that I'm gonna exit the military and go do my own thing. So I think it's just a mentality thing, right? Like there's a ton of opportunity as a young person in the military.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the what is it? The average American's highest expense is their rent or their housing income or their housing
Yeah.
bill, and that kind of is taken away in the military. So even that alone, being having the um, the mindset of investing that instead of spending that can, you know, speed that up, probably tenfold.
Yeah.
But as far as in the military, how does that work with how much you make? How much is it realistic to put away in a year? Could you put in every single penny of it, and how much would that be, do you think, for when you're just getting in?
As a young guy, it's not a ton, right? I have to go look at pay charts to give you an accurate number, but you're probably bringing in like, I don't know, $1,000, $1,200 every 2 weeks, but that's no expenses, right? Like
Yeah.
there's literally nothing. So, and that's probably on the low end. If you were overseas, it'd be a little bit more. If you were in a tax exempt zone, it'd be more. If you were in a combat zone, it'd be more. And then you'll get your first pay raise after the first year, and then or after year two, and then you'll get a pay raise. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, you get a pay raise at year 1, 2, 3, 4, and then from there on, it's every other year. You'll get 6, 8, 10. You'll get a pay raise, and then every promotion. So you bump up fairly quickly in your first 4 years. The problem, everyone says you don't make any money in the military, and yeah, okay, you're not going to get like loaded, but they focus on your W-2 income, right? So people look at your W-2 income and they say, "Wow, this asshole is only making $40,000, right? Like I'm making like, I don't know, I might have broached 50K, 45 or 50K on the W-2 this year, um, which is not much considering 12 and a half years in the military. But what they forget is that I'm getting a housing allowance that's not taxed, a food allowance that's not taxed, a medical, dental. If you were to factor everything in, I would probably need to make $110,000 or so to live the exact same lifestyle I'm living right now in this location, and to have housing and covered and medical and dental. And good luck, it would probably need to be more than that, actually, because good luck finding medical care for the 250 a year or a 250 a month that I'm paying for my family, right? It'd be 4 or 5 times that. So there's a lot of things that go into the fact that, like, yeah, okay, it might not look like you're making a ton of money on paper, but really you're doing pretty well. As far as what you could save, I tell guys, like, when you join, just automatically set up 20% into your thrift savings plan, because, and if you could do more, do more. But if you do it right off the bat, then you'll never even notice it's missing, right? Like if you get out into off boot camp and you go to your first duty station, you've been getting your full paycheck, and then all of a sudden you cut 20% out of it, you're going to feel like you're missing out. But if you put 20% of your paycheck in every month from the get go, you'll never even notice it was missing in the first place. And then what you do is every time you get a pay raise, say you get a 3% pay raise, put 2% into your thrift savings plan. You still get a little bit of a pay raise, but you just put, before you know it, you'll be at 45, 40, 50% of your paycheck going into this thing. And you're going to be maxing out your thrift savings plan without any issue. I mean, shoot, I was putting 60% of it away, for the last 3 or 4 months last year. Right now I'm sitting at like 30% because I'm trying to focus a little bit more on buying some more real estate. But I mean, you know, the key thing to do is just to remember, like, you just keep it simple and just keep it consistent. Just, you can, let's say you put 50% of your paycheck away and you only had $1,000 a month to live on.
Yeah.
If you don't have to pay, like if you don't eat out because you've got the chow hall, well, you're not paying any money there. If you don't have a car and you just use your buddies will buy cars, you just use those, right? Like $1,000 a month for, like, when you don't have any expenses at all.
Yeah, that adds up.
Yeah, I mean, that's plenty to go hang out, go have a good time. I mean, I don't know. I probably only spend about $1,000 a month right now on, with the exception of, business stuff and whatnot, but um on expenses after like housing and stuff, right? But like my groceries and everything, and all my normal like expenses for the month, it probably pull out about 500 every paycheck, and I use that cash for everything.
Yeah. When did you start really pursuing the saving 50% and investing? Was it a couple of years into being in the service, or?
Yeah, nobody gave me any good guidance. I mean, I was putting like 10% away, 8 or 10% away in there for the first 7 years I was in the military.
Mhm.
And then in like 2015, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and started reading more books on finances and stuff, I started getting a little bit more involved. I upped it to 15 and then 20 and then 25. And then I was like, I can still live comfortably here. And I increased it again. And then as I started making a little bit more money through outside of the military, I was like, well, I'll just put even more of this into my thrift savings plan. Because I didn't need the cash at the time. So the more I put in, the more it'll compound. My biggest problem was that the first like 7 years I was in the military, I was putting 10% away and I left it in the wrong fund. So luckily it's changed. Now when you join, it automatically goes into a life cycle fund and it'll, based on the day that you would theoretically be able to start withdrawals.
Hmm.
But when I joined it, it all started in the G fund, which is government backed securities or whatever. Like doesn't earn any, it's never lost money, but in 2000, I joined in '08. So in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like some of the best bull years we've had up until the last year for the stock market, I was earning 2, maybe 3% interest on my money while the rest of the world was earning 20, 30%. So I would have, had I just known to put it in the right, like in any other fund, I would have double, triple what I have in there right now. But if I had known, it would be scary to do the math. If I'd put 20% away instead of 8 to 10 and I put it in the right fund, I mean, I would probably have, I don't even want to speculate. It'd probably be close to $500,000 in there right now.
Yeah.
So,
People underestimate the power of compounding and just, having your money grow. When you think of saving, for a lot of people, probably the first thing that comes to mind is I'm just going to put this amount in a savings account. Whereas if you're you have a retirement plan and you're investing it and it's growing at 7% a year, well, you're kind of you're making money. You're not necessarily just saving it at that point. So the earlier you learn that, the better, because then the more it can grow and the faster. What type of retirement plans are there? Is it just the thrift savings, or can you have like a Roth IRA? How does that work? And also, yeah.
yeah. So the thrift savings plan has a traditional side and a Roth side. So I do most of my stuff into the Roth TSP. With the new retirement, there's the blended retirement system where the government will match up to 5%. And that 5% that they match goes into the traditional, but the rest of it you can still do in the Roth. So I do Roth because I'm fairly convinced that I will make more money in retirement than I do now.
Hmm.
But, honestly, I tell most people to do Roth in the military. Like, if you're going to sit here and complain about how little money you make as a young service member, you should probably put your money in the Roth because hopefully you'll make more money by the time you retire. And you can still do Roth IRAs on the side, right? I've got friends who do both. I have friends who max out their TSP and then do the Roth. But I would definitely max out like the 19.5 that you can put in the TSP, Roth TSP, before you go to a Roth IRA. And the crazy thing with the military too is if you end up in a combat zone, you can actually put like $58,000 a year into your thrift savings plan. So like if you were to deploy and you had the meat, like, and you're deployed, you literally don't need any money. If you're a single person, like nothing, you got, maybe you buy some cigarettes or some protein powder or something, right? Like you don't spend any money. And so, I mean, if you're married, obviously there's some stuff there, but if you were legitimately like a single dude in Afghanistan, you could put your entire, 95% of your paycheck into this thing. And depending on how long you're gone, right? You put $40,000, $50,000, I think the max is 58 right now into your TSP. Imagine if you did that when you were like 19, you put $30,000, just dumped it into this thing.
Immediately a millionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just let it ride forever, right? You're good. You don't ever need to put anything else in it again. It's like, man, I came home from Afghanistan with like $16,000 and I bought plenty of cigarettes and workout supplements while I was there. Right. And bought stuff that I didn't need. But, had I known that and just maxed that thing out, instead of taking that 16 grand and buying a Harley, a rifle, and a truck, I could be sitting here going, yep, I got $300,000 in my TSP that will be, $4 million by the time I'm 60 or whatever that comes out to, right? And I don't ever need to touch it again. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty
Have you ever heard
sweet.
of the Trinity study?
I feel like I have. Is that I heard the name? Is that's not the 4% rule
Yeah.
thing? Is it the 3% rule? Yeah.
Yeah. I forget who, maybe it was Harvard or something. Anyways, someone smarter than me did a study and they tracked the last 100 years and they figured out that if you invested enough to be able to live off of 4%, your principal would only continue to grow.
Yeah.
And uh, and okay, that sounds good, whatever. But what I feel like is underrated about that is the amount of time that it can take you to get to where you can live off of 4%. If you're doing what you're saying, like at 19 years old or right when you get in there, if you're able to dump like 30 grand in there and save a certain amount, the amount you have to save when you're younger is a lot less than when you're older because it's going to grow more if you were living off of 4% of it. And so being in the military, that's like the perfect way to do that, because you can realistically put in all that much and get to a spot where like retirement could be in 10 years, really. Like if you're able to put 50 grand in, like that's insane. And that's I've never thought about going in the military, but I mean, who knows? Maybe if I was in high school and I knew about that, it might have changed my career path. I'm a flight instructor at Embry-Riddle. That's what I'm doing right now. So the plan is to go to the airlines. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff about the military. So you're in the military right now, correct? You're
Correct.
still active, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, still active.
What sort of investments outside of your thrift savings, like with real estate, have you made? Is everything
Just
okay?
lost audio.
Hello? Can you hear me? You don't have anything? Is it on my end? You can't hear me?
Nope, I got you now.
Oh, you got me. Okay.
All right. That was weird.
No worries. I was just gonna ask, what investments and when did you start making them into real estate and things outside of your savings or your retirement?
Yeah, in 2015 I bought that duplex and I lived in one half and rented the other, and then I got stationed in Hawaii, which was rough place to live for a couple of years. And then so while I was there, and since then, so Hawaii and then San Diego, and I just kept buying in Missouri because I had a decent team set up there, and then I I kind of knew the area, so I was like, I'm familiar with this. I already own property there. I'll go back there eventually. I'll just, whatever. And so since then, I had that duplex. My wife had a house. I've bought another duplex, a 10 unit. I did a lease option on like a big 40 unit mixed use building, but we ended up not executing the option on it, so we're no longer involved. And then a couple single families, back and forth. So I guess right now, we just sold one. I'm sitting at like 19 doors in Springfield, between me for the most part, and then me and a partner on 4 of them. And then I'm also a small percent ownership as a general partner on an apartment syndication in South Carolina.
Wow, that's quite the portfolio of real estate. And your first one was in 2015, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been doing it for some time now. What was your first one? Did you just put a big down payment on? Did you buy it in cash, or how did you get it started?
Yeah, it was an FHA loan. It should have been a VA loan, but my VA lender didn't know anything about the VA loan, so I don't know. He talked me out of it. Said I couldn't use the VA loan again, which is wrong. And then so I used an FHA loan, which is fine, right? Not the end of the world. So I put 3.5% down, and then I'm trying to think. So the 10 unit was 85% bank financing, 10% seller financing, and then 5% out of pocket. And then from there, I've done some conventional, and I've done a couple small cash purchases, and kind of grown from there. Like right now, I've got 4 under contract that we're just going to buy and kind of like clean out and put on the MLS and just wholesale them. And I'm buying them cash and just cleaning them out and listing them for a little bit more money and trying to move on.
Yeah. So, as far as getting started, would you recommend for someone in the military to use the VA loan, and then to another person, the FHA loan is the most reasonable?
Yeah. If you're in the military, the VA loan, especially if you are doing a house hack, which is like my favorite thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, sorry.
No
Need more coffee. Yeah. So if you're in the military, use the VA loan. You can buy a house hack, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and rent out all the other units. And if you're a single dude and you do that, or girl, you can also rent out rooms in your personal unit. I have a friend out here in San Diego who bought a fourplex for like $1.2 million and is making about $600 a month to own it. And so, and then he's saving his housing allowance, and he's paying down like $2,500 a month in principal. And so, I mean, he's doing all right with that alone, not including for, potential appreciation. So it's scary, but even in expensive markets, you can make it work. Just depends on, you got to buy right. But yeah, I think the house hack is the greatest thing in the world. I mean, if you do it in Missouri, right, you buy a $200,000 fourplex, you rent 3 of the units out for 550, and now you're paying 350 a month to own a fourplex, and you're paying off that much in principal every month. Like, the coolest thing there is, if your tenants are paying the majority of your mortgage and your expenses, you're still getting the housing allowance. So then you can just save the housing allowance and reinvest that into your next real estate purchase, or your next, whatever that might be, your next investment. So on top of spending less money for housing and getting to save more, you're also getting to learn how to be a landlord, getting to learn how to deal with tenants, if you want to, or you can hire a property manager and just never deal with them at all. And you're learning the basics of investing, and it's not scary, right? A lot of people get the analysis paralysis. They get scared to pull the trigger on their first property, but that's because it's a rental, and rentals are scary because it's an investment, it's risky, whatever, all that psychology stuff. But buying a house for yourself isn't really that scary. We grow up thinking like, oh yeah, get a job, buy a house, whatever. So buying a duplex isn't nearly as scary if you're living in one half as it seems to go and buy a rental somewhere else. So it's a good way to get over that and get yourself into real estate and do proof of concept, because it's like, psychologically, you're just buying a house, but
Yeah.
then you realize you're saving a ton of money. I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Hmm. So, what would be the advantages of doing that over just owning a house and then buying the house and then renting all the rooms out of it? You see what I'm saying?
You mean like, just as a straight up investment?
Yeah.
The main advantage is that the VA loan is zero down.
Oh, the VA
So
loan. Right. Okay.
yeah. I mean, there's, if you're looking apples to apples, I like the house hack anyway, because if you say you own a house that you live in and you're paying the full mortgage, but then you buy another investment, that investment might make you good money, but you're still paying the full mortgage where you live. So I like the house hacking idea, just because you're mitigating your largest expense while
Yeah.
also getting all the other benefits. But the VA loan is the main. You have to occupy, you have to own or occupy to use the VA loan, and so it makes sense to do a house hack because you get all those benefits. But let's say you're a 20-year-old service member who just got married and gets housing allowance, like, okay, well, you probably don't have $40,000 or $20,000 laying around for a down payment.
Yeah.
So the VA loan is the shoe in there.
Got it. That's really cool. So, when you're looking for a property, uh, what are some things you are looking for that are going to be good indications that you would be able to cash flow, have people in it? Do you flip things? Are you trying to renovate when you're looking for a house? How does that change?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. I prefer just long term buy and hold. Uh, Not super. I mean, flipping is good. You make some good money, but I like the idea of holding long term and having good cash flow. Um, I look for properties. I mean, I'm in the Midwest, right? So my properties, the rent ratio is pretty good. I can usually get like a 1.2% rule, as they jokingly call it, or whatever. So, $100,000 house I can probably rent for $1,200 a month. Um, and then, it could be in decent shape and I'll be okay. So I generally look for those numbers. If I'm in a nicer area of town, it won't be quite so good, but just really depends. And then I'm looking for things that I can get into either with a lot of equity. So I'm getting into them under what they're actually worth, like off market deals, or that I can get into like seller financing. I'm not trying to pay full retail if I'm using a bank, right?
Hmm.
I want either, hey, I'll pay you back at, really favorable terms to me, or I want a discount, because there's just, that's where you make your money, off the discount when you buy. So, and then, I mean, it kind of depends. Like, once I move back there in a few months, I'll probably do more actual like flipping and construction renovation stuff. I had a contractor, horror story where I lost like $30,000 on a flip. So I've decided that I'm going to just wait till I'm in town before I start doing that again. Not that I couldn't do it from afar, but I'm going to be back soon. So why mess with it? Um, and so, like, I've got two right now that would make great flips, but I'm just going to tack a fee on and wholesale it to someone else.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. How are how are you finding these deals? Are you just driving around? Do you know people who have a good deal? How does that work?
I am pulling lists through PropStream or List Source, and I am sending out direct mail letters and texting. So the direct letters is a much more blanket, large mass audience, and then text blasting allows me to reach out to people who we got return to sender or whatever, so I can follow up and say, hey, I tried to send you a letter, and I don't know, it came back to me, so I'm trying to get a hold of you. You want to, want to talk about your house. And I'm pulling lists for right now. I'm pulling like absentee homeowners. So, they own the house, but they don't live in it. So that might be a landlord. It might be someone who inherited the house. It might be um, any number of things. But my like kind of my gold right now is just landlords who are looking to retire and they think this is like the right time in the market. And, so you find them and they're like, oh yeah, I'll sell you all my stuff for, so we bought a small portfolio of five units 2 months ago and got it for a pretty good deal. I mean, she didn't get ripped off. We gave her what she was asking for it. And then we walked into some equity and they were cash flowing. So,
Wow. So you're sending out um, these mass texts and letters. Are you just taking a list of addresses, or you're looking for landlords that are about to retire? Where do you get the addresses to send them to?
yeah, you can buy lists through either List Source or PropStream, and what they do is
Oh, okay.
they aggregate all the data from tax records and public records, and so you're looking for people whose like the property address and their mailing address don't match. So it's just saying, hey, we live here, but we still own this property. So you're looking for that. It's someone who doesn't live in the house, and then there's other ways you can really narrow that down, but like that's the easiest list is to just pull 3 or 4 thousand names like that and slowly start. You can handwrite and send letters if you don't want to spend money. Um, I don't recommend that. I did the first like 110 handwritten letters and it was miserable and I'm never going to do it again. Um, so I just pay for like postcards or there's a lot of different companies. I'm using Ballpoint Marketing right now, which is like a robot that actually holds the pen. So it looks like real handwriting. They're a little bit more pricey, but they seem to work really well. So it just kind of depends on, what your goals are.
Yeah. Would you recommend door knocking? Just going to a nice neighborhood and just knocking on doors? Would that work?
If you have really thick skin,
Yeah.
um, door knocking can work for sure. I've knocked on doors. I've done driving for dollars, like drive around, look for crappy houses, and then knock on doors or send them letters. It's going to depend on your market, right? If you're going through like a super high end neighborhood, knocking on doors is probably not going to give you a really great deal. So you'd probably want to go through either like crappy houses in a decent neighborhood or crummier neighborhoods where people might not, if you're to walk through like a really nice neighborhood, they're probably sophisticated enough to know that the guy knocking on their door is not the best offer they're going to get. Um, but I mean, it totally can work. Another thing I've seen is I've heard people like befriending post office postmen or whatever and saying like, hey, if you notice any houses that are getting dilapidated on your route, like you bring them to me, I'll give you like a $500 finder's fee. There's all kinds of ways you can get creative about finding properties. I've just found that for sake of scale, it sometimes is just better to just blast out 3,000 letters over the course of a month than it is to, I can't knock on that many doors without losing my sanity.
What's your response percentage of those mass sendings?
Depends on the which avenue you're doing and which list. Some lists are like if you send to absentee homeowners, they're probably investors, so you might get a higher response rate because they're not just going to assume you're spam, but they're also going to want, like, they're going to know what their properties are worth. But if you're sending to single family owners who live in their house, you're much more likely to get told to go to hell. But so it depends, but probably anywhere from like I'd say like 8 to 15% on average. And then the text messaging, we actually get a lot higher response ratio. Probably well, again, it kind of depends because sometimes you'll as that's kind of a new avenue for marketing, and so like companies like AT&T and stuff, like it's becoming it fluctuates because you might send 100 texts and 85 of them make it to the person, or you might send 100 texts and like 40 of them get blocked by the carrier. It kind of depends on if like there's trigger words you can't use or they'll get blocked, and people mark things as spam. So there's do not call lists. But of people we actually get a hold of, the response rate on that is usually like 30, 35. A lot of that is just how'd you get my number? But we found that kind of on average right now for us is like 2,000 text messages equal a deal.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And as far as picking the right deal, what are some tells that you found an undervalued home? Like, is it location? How do you go about that?
Usually just pulling comps, just looking at what homes are selling for. I look in the half-mile radius within the last 6 months and see what homes are selling for. And then I have a guy on the ground who will actually go to the appointment and walk the house for me and then come back and say, hey, it's worth this. Like, okay, cool. Well, and usually what I'm doing is I'm just asking them what they're wanting for the house. You never name your price first. And so I had a house the other day. I might have been willing to pay like 18 for this thing. And when I asked them what they wanted, they said 13. Like, okay, I'll take it. So, there's a lot of misses for sure. There's a lot of people who want full retail or think their house is worth way more than it actually is. So it's a matter of kind of showing like, hey, these are the houses that sold in your area. Your house is going to need this much work. And then, breaking it down for them. Because a lot of people just don't want to deal with, these houses are crummy enough in a lot of situations that nobody's going to be able to buy it unless they're buying cash because no bank is going to lend on the property. And so they're kind of in a spot where it's like, well, do you want to renovate this thing? Do you have the cash to renovate this thing? Or do you want to just get rid of it because you're going to scrounge for the next 3 years to pull up 20 grand to renovate your house? Or I can just give you, you might make an extra 5 grand, or I can just give you the money right now. And so those are kind of I've been joking, but my agent has been giving me a hard time because he's like, you're sending me all these houses that I need a gun to go inside. Like, they're good money. So yeah. And yeah, obviously if it's in a good location, all the better. We've got, of the 4 we have under contract right now, one of them is in a pretty solid location and it's not the $12,000 one. But the $12,000 one's actually not in a bad area. It just needs a ton of work. And then one of them is like, I wouldn't go here if you were a single woman at night. I don't know. But hey, the house is, falling off the hinges, but the dirt underneath it itself is worth more than what we're paying for it. So it's kind of one of those, to the right person, it'll be worth a substantial amount. It's just got to clean it up and put some windows on it. And, so we're buying some pretty beat up houses.
Yeah. Would you say you're trying to find the worst house in the best neighborhood? Or
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the right way to go for.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, even if it's not the best neighborhood, it's as long as the house has plenty of room to go. So I want to be all in on a home or be able to hand the home to somebody all in, where even with renovation costs, they won't be more than like 70-75% of what the value will be after repairs. So if the house is going to be worth $100,000 after it's completely renovated, then I need to be able to get it to somebody where they could pay whatever it's going to cost to renovate and still be less than $70,000 into the home. That leaves them a margin to sell it or to refinance, and that leaves me a margin to make some money. So say I find a home and it's going to be worth 100 grand and it's going to need $40,000 in repairs. Okay, well that means I got to get it for 30 myself and then hand it to somebody for 30. So if I want to make 5,000 off it, I got to get it for $25,000 or less. And then, okay, well, I got it for 25. I got to give it to this guy for 30. He's got to put $40,000 into it. It'll come out at 70. And obviously there's a lot more wiggle room that you would use and math that goes into that, but that's the rough idea.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I was going to ask you about, I was going to ask about how much debt you're willing to hold at one time, is because that is probably the scariest part of real estate investing, right? Is having a mortgage to pay. And if it's on multiple houses, where do you draw that line?
I have a lot of debt. I actually don't think debt is that terrible, especially right now, right? If my thing right now, like I'm going to take on any and all debt that people will give me at this point, because if I'm getting 2.5% interest, inflation is going to basically make that free money to me.
Yeah.
5 years from now, I will be way better off because of inflation and being able to raise rents. So I, by no means telling people go, over leverage yourself. I think the right answer is, as long as you can comfortably pay all of your expenses and the mortgage, then go ahead and take on the debt. As long as you've got some stuff left over there, right? So you need a cushion. What scares me is when people are taking out loans that they, if you're going to move out of the house and not be able to make the mortgage once you move off, if you have to pay money on top of your tenant's income or rental income, if you're still having to pay in order to, hold on to that house, that's scary to me, right? Like, that's not a spot you want to be in, because then if the value drops on the home, you're totally screwed, because you're paying to hold on to a house that's not worth what you're paid for it. Like, that's not a good spot to be in. But as far as, if your properties are making you a substantial amount of money over the mortgage, I don't see any problem with having a lot of debt. I try to stay fairly not over leveraged, I guess. I mean, when I first started, I was buying properties for 5-6% down everywhere I could, but now I'm getting into them with a lot more equity. So I'll only be, 20 or 30% of the value of the property on a mortgage. And then I got plenty of room for paying it off. So I have no problem pulling as many of those loans as humanly possible, with interest rates being as low as they are right now.
How long do you think that's going to last with the interest rates?
Yeah, the Fed said they were going to leave it for like 2 or 3 years. So I don't know. I mean, I I wouldn't be surprised if we see rates in the 5 or 6% again, and within the next decade. But I don't know how long it's gonna hold. They said they're gonna hold it for another year or two, after but that can change very quickly.
And I'm not sure exactly how this works, but isn't it with the increase of inflation, the interest rates will keep going down? Is that
No, it's so the interest rates track, and I'm not gonna get super technical on this because I'll mess it all up. They track mortgage-backed securities, so it's or government-backed anyway. Uh, they trail anyway. Inflation and interest rates are not like causal.
right?
Um, Inflation. So the government has a set percentage of inflation that they try to hit. I think they said that it's gonna be 3% for the next little while. And so they will tweak things like interest rates to kind of like speed and slow down all of that, but it's not like basically what they're doing. It's like the interest rates will they dictate like how much people buy and how much people go into debt or whatever. So if
Are
you
putting into the economy.
yeah, if you increase interest rates, prices will compress and less people will borrow. And then if you decrease interest rates, prices will go up and more people will be buying and borrowing. And so they use all of that to kind of play with inflation rates and a lot of other stuff. And I am sure any economist who's listening to this is probably like just embarrassed at my terrible job of trying to explain all that. But
Well, I mean, that
um,
makes a lot. That seems pretty straightforward to me. It makes a lot of sense, and it's almost like they're incentivizing people to
yeah,
invest in real estate. It's probably one of the better times to invest because interest rates are low, and like
yep,
you were saying, you can beat that inflation. Whereas if someone's listening to this and they have 100 grand in a checking account, they're losing
yep.
money 3% every single year.
Yeah. Yeah, and real estate's inflation hedge anyway, right? Because if the dollar, like if $1 is suddenly worth $1.30, or sorry, if $1.30 is suddenly worth $1, whatever, right? Whichever way you look at it. A gallon of milk might have been $1, but now it's $1.30, right? Whereas if you owned a home and the same thing happened, the value of the home is probably about $130,000 now. So like, because land doesn't depreciate, it follows the dollar.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
that's really cool. As far as another way to get into real estate, what do you think of home equity line of credits? Would you advise that? Is that a good
Yeah.
way if you're starting out?
Yeah. If you've got enough equity that you can use one, I used a HELOC to buy my 10 unit, and I used it again to to invest in a different property. Um, it's just going to come down to interest rates, right? But like, I pay 3% on that, on my home equity line of credit. So if that 3% allowed me to get into a property where I make a lot more than that, then yeah, go for it. Just make sure you're not over leveraging, because the risk with a HELOC is that if you can't afford to pay for the HELOC or whatever, and then now you risk losing your home, like that's not exactly an ideal spot to be in. So just make sure that you're not going super crazy on the home equity line of credit, but I'm all for using them to buy properties.
Yeah, because it's not like when people think of debt, they the first ones that come to people that come to mind are credit card debt or just this, not any sort of an asset. Whereas this is more of leverage, like you're using it to get more money back in return. So I think it's important to kind of distinguish the difference. Student debt, that sucks. I got a lot of that, and I'm going to be a pilot, so
you'll
it's
pay
like
it
the only
off.
way. But that's one of the my biggest concerns, and I feel like real estate can be one of the most effective ways to be able to counteract that. I'm reading this book right now. It's called Landlord Away Your Student Debt, and he's basically just right when he graduated, he started buying apartments or I think the first one was a duplex, and flipped it, and then he's just continually using the rents to pay off his student loans, which probably sounds easier than it actually is. There's probably a lot more that goes into it. But yeah, that's
cool,
why.
though.
Yeah, I'm really interested in real estate, and that's why I really appreciate talking to people like you. I talked to this other guy, Ryan Schultz, I think, from Lead the Way Capital, and it seems like one of the best ways to build wealth, right? Isn't it? Most millionaires are from real estate.
It's what they say. Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the Bigger Pockets podcast at all, do you know who Ed Milet is?
I've heard of the podcast. I'm not super familiar though.
Yeah, so Ed Milet was one of their guests here recently, and he's known for all kinds of random things. He's become he's probably one of the better speakers out there, actually. Very well known, got a podcast, all this awesome stuff. But I didn't know it. I didn't even know that he got his start in real estate. And I was listening to their podcast, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's talking about buying like $97 million worth of real estate this year. But so he's obviously doing all right. But yeah, I think real estate's one of the ways that you can go from not making a lot of money to, because the thing is, you're getting the leverage, right? So there's so many benefits to real estate, but let's just use leverage for like one thing, right? Like this year's been nuts for the stock market, right? But if you put $1,000 or if you put $20,000 into the stock market this year and you earned 30%, then you got $26,000 in the stock market. That's pretty freaking good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I put $20,000 into a house and that house only went up 6% in value, I gained the same amount of money because the bank gave me the other $80,000 and I got the appreciation on that. And that's not accounting for any of my mortgage that got paid down or any cash flow I got on top of any of that. So it's like the numbers are going to pan out differently depending on what you use. But like in that scenario, a 30% gain in the stock market was equal to what, 6% on my house. It's pretty easy. I mean, 6% appreciation is a lot, but there's some pretty cool things that come with that territory. Or if you take if you want to get really crazy, you take my 10 unit. I bought that thing for like 4.9% down. I paid $10,900 to close on that house, or on that 10 units, $212,500. I paid $10,900 out of pocket. 18 months later, I refinanced. I paid off the seller financing, paid off my original investment, and then I put it on a 16-year note. So it's going to be paid off much quicker. I'm paying more on the mortgage. I'm paying more in principal and everything else. But I don't have a single penny invested in this thing. It pays me like $1,000 to $1,200 a month to own it without any of my own money in it. Oh, and by the way, now things in the market are selling at like a 6 or 7% capitalization rate, which basically means that this property I bought for 212, I could turn around and sell for 350 or 400 right now. And so it's like, yeah, it's a pretty solid return in 4 years. I put 11 grand down. It's not even in the property anymore. And I could walk away with 10, 15 times that theoretically. I mean, I'm probably just going to refinance it and, pull some money out that way, but pretty cool opportunity. That's obviously not every deal by any means, but the fact that I was able to use essentially $200,000 of other people's money towards my own financial gain is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, $200,000 for something with 10 units, is that normal?
No. No, it's a very affordable market and also a really crummy kind of bottom of the rung, property where I'm sure people in my unit are probably doing heroin, but no, so it's not the best property in the area. It's not the worst property in the area, but it's not the best property in the area. And then the landlord was the same thing. Like they were sick of being a landlord, so I think it appraised for 250 when I bought it. And then it's appraised a lot more than that since then, but it was just kind of like one of those, they just were done and they wanted out, and I was the right person, right time. And yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones to look for. Have you had one that's just bombed and you've had a terrible experience with?
Yeah, I lost 30K on a flip.
Yeah, that's rough. Is that pretty normal if you're doing this as a business, or what's?
You're always going to lose money. I've heard some house flippers jokingly say that the goal with house flipping is to make enough money on your good flips that you don't lose money when you have the crappy one come and go. The joke being that you're going to have them. I don't know that it's normal. I mean, that property would have worked out okay had it not been for a contractor that basically went out of business and just disappeared with my money, which is my fault for paying him more than I should have up front.
Um,
But I know some friends who've lost money on deals, but I think it's just all comes down to experience. You got to have a decent team. You got to have a good contractor. You got to have good, management processes. But as long as you're conservative on your numbers, you should be okay. I actually, my friend Alex is always saying that he thinks it's better when people lose money on their first flip anyway, because if you make a ton of money on your first flip, you're going to get in a little bit over aggressive perhaps, and then you might lose even more down the road. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, cool. As far as other ways that you've been able to build wealth, what are some other like passive income or side hustles that you've found?
well, I've dabbled in all kinds of random side hustles from, I did Instacart, delivered groceries for like a couple weeks.
That's what I
That
do.
sucked. Do you?
Yeah,
I did not enjoy it at all. Maybe it's just because of where I'm at, but like by the time I got the groceries and got them to somebody's house, I was barely making $10 an hour. I was just like, this sucks.
it's different over here.
Yeah, I think it depends on how close you are to grocery stores, how many orders you can pick up at once.
Yeah.
I was not making any money. I've done that. I've done what's it called, Toro, right, where you rent out your car online to somebody
Oh,
else. I've done Uber. I've horsed around with a lot of those things. As far as like passive income, um, I have a course for like on real estate. It's super affordable little course, nothing crazy. But I make a little bit of money through that. And then through now that the platform's kind of growing, I make a little bit. I probably make $300-400 through ad revenue on YouTube, which is probably about break even now because I'm started paying editors and stuff. So uh, it's my expenses have kind of crept up with that to keep up with what I'm doing. But so probably make about, I think I made like 390 this month through YouTube, and then some
cool.
other like some affiliate stuff. So if I was to recommend a company and they happen to have an affiliate program and you use my link, I might get a little bit of money from that, but nothing crazy, I guess. Just here a little bit here and there. I don't have like one source of passive income that like dominates everything else.
Yeah,
I mean, except for real estate.
right. How many subscribers are you at on YouTube?
Should be closing in on
Uh,
9,000. So we're
oh,
growing.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm at 75, but I'm not
It
in it.
comes.
Yeah.
It'll come. It'll come.
Yeah, I mean I've already gotten back way more than I could have asked for from doing this as far as
Yep.
the value that I'm learning. That's the whole idea because I don't know anything.
Exactly.
I'm
No.
so dumb when it comes to all this stuff. But I mean, when I talk to people like you and like a lot of these other finance guys, I don't know if you know Whiteboard Finance,
Yeah.
Marco Zlatic, I had an interview with him. He's such a smart dude. And
Yes.
ultimately, I'm expanding my network. I don't know if you know this. I'm planning on bugging you for a while since I've talked to you now, just just to pick your brain
Works
on
for
things
me.
if you don't mind. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, eventually, if more people want to watch, that's cool. But I just enjoy having these conversations. It also blows my mind that people could make money doing something like this. Just
Yeah.
talking to someone and learning. That's crazy to me. Um, but yeah, I mean, here nor there. Um, would you say it's important for everybody to be working on something else like a side hustle, even if it's not their main job, or would you say just stick with one thing and put everything into that?
I think that depends on where you're at in life, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a family, then I would see how you can increase your income without adding hours to your like work, right? Like spend time with your family.
Yeah.
If you're a single dude and you've got nothing better to do than try to like go find yourself a date somewhere, that's great. But yeah, I would hustle, 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 and get to a point where you don't need you know the money anymore. Because because again, it's all like we said, compounding, right? The earlier you can build that base, you're either going to suffer now or you're going to suffer later. So you might as well do it now and get it over with. um, you don't want to be struggling to barely keep your nose above water for the rest of your life. So I'm all for it. I think that's one of the other things that the military has a great advantage on, because we're used to working really long hours without extra pay. So when you can like take the time to go do like Uber, you're like, oh, I'm getting paid for this. Like, this is great. You don't mind working weekends. I know several guys who do Uber on weekends and stuff. I the other thing I think is like, you know, if you can like if there's room for you to grow at your current job, right, then do it rather than take on a side. So for example, in the military, I know guys who will go and they'll go drive for Uber for every weekend, right? And they'll make I don't know, $200 a night, maybe, who knows, right? We'll say $200 a weekend, and so they make $800. I don't know, that's great. But maybe they didn't run their fitness test at a decent pace or whatever, and they delayed their promotion by 6 months. Well, that stinks, because the promotion would have been worth $250 and you already go to work. So I always joke with people, it's like, man, you're so worried about making $200 tonight, doing this, but like, if you just do this one thing over here, you'll make $200 a month for, the rest of the time you're in the military without having to do any extra time. Like, um, so I think kind of, that way, right? Like if there's, what's what they call entrepreneurs, or like people who can like help people who help design products inside of their company or whatever and get like a piece of it.
Oh yeah.
If there's ways in your business that you can increase the income from what you're already doing with your time, that's probably the best return on your investment. But other than that, I'm all for the hustles and stuff. I mean, I got all kinds of random crap that I do. So
Yeah, the entrepreneur term. I've never heard of that, but one of it's probably my best friend if he's listening to this, Gage Crockett. Shout out to Gage, but he is a flight instructor in the TBM. It's a high performing. It's a pretty sick plane. They sell for like $4 million. But he made an app, or he's working on an app where the clients that they're training in them can use and have all their information, and he's going to sell it, I think, to the owner. He's planning for it. I don't know if I'm actually supposed to say that right now, but no one listens to this thing anyways. So yeah, that's that's a good point. It seems like income has got to be the biggest factor, because if you have income, you can have more room to take risk and do things like that. So yeah, that's a really
yeah, and
good
I would
insight.
also say that, like, if you're gonna spend all this time driving Uber and stuff, like, make sure you don't have expenses that you could cut out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another huge one, right? If you earn an extra $1,000 and you get, 250 of it taken away in taxes, but if you save $1,000 that you're already spending, you get to save all $1,000 because you were already taxed on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's true. There's probably a lot of things that people don't realize. There's just subscriptions online and things like that that can just eat
yep.
away. All right, I don't want to take too much of your time. There's always a couple questions I like to ask, though, because it's the Get Wealth podcast. I like to ask what your definition of wealth is.
The ability to do what I want when I want without having someone else dictate my time.
Yeah, I agree. That's true, because if you're making $1 million a year, but you're working every second of it, then
Yep.
I don't know if that's true wealth there.
Nope.
And then what's a book you would recommend for real estate or business or just overall that's helped you? Which one?
Oh, there's so many. For real estate, I mean, one of my favorites actually is the 4 Hour Work Week. I think if we're going to talk business, I love that one. It's Tim Ferriss, and it talks about like how to become efficient. It talks a little bit about side hustles and passive income too, but it talks about becoming efficient, which is, I think, very, very important. Um, as far as real estate specific, all of Bigger Pockets stuff, but how to invest in real estate or the book on rental property investing. And then if you want more of a finance oriented one, Set for Life, those are all authored by the Bigger Pockets publishing company, and they're all really, really good.
That's awesome. Listen, man, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge. You definitely know what you're talking about. And I think anybody that hears this conversation is better off than they were before. So is there anything you want to plug as far as your business, your websites, links, anything like that?
Nothing too crazy. I would just say, if you're interested in tagging along, you can find us online at Military Millionaire or From Military to Millionaire. And we got a Facebook group. Happy to talk to anyone and help you guys out. And thank you very much for having me on the show, Brennan.
Yeah, happy to do it. All right, everybody, get wealthy.